Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, December 1st, the first day of the month of December, and certainly looks like it could be a very interesting month in terms of the weather across much of the central and eastern U.S. All signs continue to point to a cold weather pattern for much of the nation. We've been talking extensively about teleconnection indices such as the NAO and the AO, the North Atlantic Oscillation and the Arctic Oscillation, that will drop deeply into negative territory and remain there for a sustained period of time. That in turn typically leads to high latitude blocking. We talked extensively about the likelihood for more frequent high latitude blocking events in our winter outlook, and you can find that at the ArcfieldWeather.com page of seasonal outlooks, partly as a result of the volcanic eruption and its impact earlier this year down in the South Pacific. Believe it or not, that historically led to stratospheric cooling in the southern hemisphere, which subsequently led to more frequent high latitude blocking scenarios in the subsequent northern hemisphere winter. So take a look at that winter outlook on that. Again, we have a high latitude blocking situation that will unfold over the next a couple of weeks, and it looks like it'll stick around for a while. That's what's meant by a blocking pattern. Usually it sticks around for a while, and we'll focus in on the possibility of more activity, a potential storm threat by the time we get to the middle of December. This is just one forecast map I wanted to show from the ensemble run of the European model. We will next take a look at the ensemble run of the GFS model here, but this is a forecast map from yesterday's run of the European, the ensemble version, for December 12th. It's a ways away here, but just wanted to point out the potential pattern that we're looking at here. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast map, and here you have very, very high heights compared to normal, sitting over those magical places that we've often talked about: Greenland, northeastern Canada, even Iceland. This is your negative NAO and negative AO type of pattern here that has an influence on the overall height field. And again, you have that significant high pressure over this part of North America. In fact, some of the forecast models at the surface are predicting high pressure to develop at the surface as high as like 1080 millibars over the next week or two in that region, and that is near all-time record highs for atmospheric pressure at the surface. In addition, you have this very impressive looking trough right here along the eastern seaboard. At the same time, you have ridging popping up across the western U.S. These are all pretty good signs for cold and potentially stormy weather pattern for the central and eastern U.S. by, again, the middle part of December, especially that second week of December, maybe the 8th or 9th, all the way to the 13th or 14th. That's kind of a real time period to focus in on. This, again, is a forecast map for the 12th. And this kind of a pattern could certainly lead to a storm along the eastern seaboard. Now, anytime you have blocking like that, that kind of extreme blocking to the north, you always have to watch out for the possibility of a storm being suppressed farther and farther to the south. Could ultimately result in some snow all the way down to the southeastern part of the nation, but that's way out there in the speculation phase. In addition, we have this high pressure ridging over near Alaska. This is signs of a negative EPO. This ridge right here is really signs of what we call a PNA index, Pacific North American pattern here. So we have all kinds of teleconnection indices here that suggest you could have a cold and stormy weather pattern setting up: a negative NAO, a negative AO, a negative EPO, and a positive PNA, which really is associated with ridging that forms out in the western part of the nation. All of this leads to the likelihood that cold air masses can drop from central and northern Canada all the way into the central and eastern part of the U.S. Well, let's take a quick look at those aforementioned teleconnection indices, the NAO and the AO, and we've been kind of focused on those because they have a big impact potentially on the central and eastern part of the U.S. in terms of the temperature pattern as well as the precipitation pattern and the possibility of East Coast snowstorms, for example. And both of these are forecasted not only to drop into negative territory, but to stay there for quite a while. And that's somewhat unusual this early in the season for the month of December. It's been many years in the month of December where we've seen a potential pattern like this with this strong of a high latitude blocking event. But here we are right now. The black represents the observed and the red represents the forecast. NAO is going to drop into negative territory and remain there. This goes all the way out to about the middle part of the month of December. Again, a signal that high latitude blocking, higher pressures than normal, higher heights than normal will form over Greenland, Iceland, northeastern Canada. That in turn increases the likelihood for cold air masses to make their way all the way from northern Canada into the central and eastern part of the nation. Another teleconnection index we've been looking at, the Arctic Oscillation, kind of the closely related cousin to the NAO. It too drops sharply into deep negative territory over the next few days and remains there right through the first half of the month of December. So you combine the NAO and the AO and the trend in those, as well as the EPO and the PNA, all these teleconnection indices are indicating the possibility of a cold weather pattern for much of the nation, especially the eastern two-thirds of the nation, and potentially an increasingly stormy pattern as well. Well, now let's take a look at last night's run of the ensemble version of the GFS. Up front, we saw an example forecast map from ensemble version of the European model from yesterday. Here is last night's ensemble run, the 500 millibar height anomalies, and we'll focus in on Greenland, for example, right in this region right here, northeastern Canada. And we start off with a very strong ridging over the Aleutian Islands here, higher heights than normal, as we begin this period on Thursday morning. Now, let's move forward here rather quickly and watch what happens with respect to these 500 millibar height anomalies. By the time we get to the weekend, we start to see higher heights between Greenland and Iceland in that particular part of North America. A lot of players on the field here. Deep upper level low over central Canada. Another one sitting off the northwest U.S. coast, and that high pressure region continues over Alaska, especially the Aleutian Island area. Now, let's keep moving forward here into next week now. We're now into the early part of next week, and look at this starting to form here, really intensifying here. Again, this is a being signaled by the sharp drop, the forecasted sharp drop in the NAO and the AO. High latitude blocking, higher heights than normal, setting up over Greenland. Meanwhile, you have this deep upper level low early next week over central Canada. Let's keep moving forward here rather quickly here. And at this particular time, notice you still have some higher heights than normal along the eastern seaboard with this high latitude blocking setting up. Now, by about the 7th or so, we'll see that in a moment here, there will be another cold front coming through. And it's really behind that front that I see more sustained cold air for the eastern part of the nation. We're very cold today in the east, tomorrow as well, but it's a kind of a short-lived cold blast. By Saturday, we'll get back up to near 60 degrees in places like D.C., maybe even Philly and New York. We'll see the upper 50s on Saturday. Drops down again following a frontal passage, turns colder on Sunday, then a relatively moderate chill Monday and Tuesday of next week, and again, maybe after the 7th or so, when another cold front comes through, will we become more sustained cold air. Here we are now all the way out to December 9th. This is a week from tomorrow. Very, very strong blocking, higher heights than normal, higher pressure than normal, centered over Greenland at this particular time. Go out a little bit farther in time and watch what happens with this trough. Over the Atlantic Ocean, it tends to retrograde back or build back towards the eastern seaboard. And here we are. This is December 12th time period that we showed up front. December 12th, kind of a key date to focus in on. That might be right in the center of that volatile time period, the second week of December, where there could be a storm near the eastern seaboard. Here is troughiness setting up along the east. Here is that ridge, and this is the GFS version, ensemble version. Up front we saw similar predictions here by the European ensemble. This is your plus PNA, your ridging setting up over the western U.S. You have ridging starting to show up again over Alaska, and here's that high latitude blocking and a trough over the eastern seaboard. And keep in mind, this is an ensemble forecast going all the way out 10, 11, 12 days out in the future, and that tends to smooth things out a bit. So you won't see the purples, for example, at this particular time that far out, because it kind of tends to smooth things out. It tends to go a little bit towards climatology, so you don't see quite the extreme. But that could change as you get closer and closer to event time. So this is a very interesting weather pattern here for the eastern part of the nation by the time we get to about the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th time frame in the month of December. Well, let's wrap up by looking at the operational version of the GFS, the surface forecast map, starting with this morning, Thursday morning. Strong high pressure situated over the Midwest, and the difference in pressure between this high and a strong low over the maritime regions of Canada, causing this strong tight pressure gradient here, represented here by the black lines, the isobars, the lines of equal pressure here. Whenever you see tight isobars, that usually translates into strong winds, and winds can gust up to 40 miles per hour or so today out of the northwest. DC, Philadelphia, New York City, a cold air mass has moved in. Let's now move forward here, and it stays cold on Friday. This is the Friday morning forecast map. High pressure moves over the mid-Atlantic region. That will certainly reduce the winds dramatically, but it starts off real cold way down in the low to mid-20s in many of the suburban areas along the I-95 corridor region on Friday morning. And look at this fetch of air on Friday morning out across the middle part of the nation. That is a southwesterly flow of air. Winds flow counterclockwise around lows like this, and clockwise around highs like this. So this is a broad fetch of southwesterly flow here that will first pump milder air from the south central states into the Great Lakes on Friday, and then that translates right here into the eastern seaboard on Saturday. Probably temperatures closer to 60 degrees on Saturday afternoon in places like DC, even Philly and New York City could get up to the upper 50s. But there will be showers associated with this next cold front. Front comes through, temperatures drop. By Sunday morning, we're back in the colder air. Not excessively cold, but certainly 55 to 60 degree highs on Saturday. DC, Philadelphia, New York City, probably more like 40 to 45 degree highs on Sunday. That cold high pressure system sitting right on top of the region on Sunday. Then we'll quickly move into next week. We have this next front, and I wanted to point this out. Here we are, Wednesday, December 7th. This is next Wednesday, and this frontal system right here is kind of an important front in my opinion, because it ushers in a colder air mass, and this is the time period where I think we have more sustained cold air from here on out, basically in the eastern part of the nation. When I say here on out, I mean for perhaps the middle and latter part of December. More sustained cold air. And let's move forward from here after the 7th. Here we have cold high pressure right in this region right here, setting up by a week from now. This is next Thursday, December 8th. Look at that high pressure, 1042 high pressure, cold air all the way down in the mid-Atlantic region. And again, I think it sticks around, more of a sustained cold air pattern. And then we'll have to watch maybe multiple waves of low pressure that will form here. And again, with that extreme strong high latitude blocking, watch out for suppression of low pressure systems by the time we get to 10 days out from now, 15 days out from now. In other words, could be cold enough for some snow all the way down to the southeastern part of the nation. Some of these storms may be suppressed farther to the south and not have an impact on New England, let's say, but that's still way out there in speculation phase. Here we go all the way out to the 11th of December, yet another cold air mass. And again, there'll be more frequent cold air intrusions into the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. after we get through that frontal passage around December 7th or so. And it's this particular time that will start to really become focused in the eastern U.S. for the possibility of a storm system maybe forming somewhere along the eastern seaboard. So a very interesting weather pattern setting up for the eastern two-thirds of the nation, it looks like, for much of the month of December. December begins today with a cold air shot into the eastern part of the nation. It's rather short-lived. Turns much milder on Saturday, for example, but more sustained cold is on the way probably after the 7th or 8th of the month of December. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.